Turn it on now. Okay. Hi, everybody. We're going to get started soon. So if you are looking forward to the Livestock Guardian Dog session, go ahead, take a seat. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Do we have someone shut the doors, or do the moderators shut the doors? Okay, I want people to keep coming in, so I definitely don't want to shut them just yet. But yeah. Okay, and I'll give people, have people been giving a couple minutes after the hour to start? Yeah. Okay. So it's 3 on the dot right now. It just changed. So I could do my little spiel and kill time, and then I'll shut the doors once I hand it to you. Yeah. That's not good. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Hi, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. So go ahead and take a seat. I'm so excited you're with us for Oak Conference. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Katie Harvey. I'm Oak's CSA Program Manager. Excited to have you at conference today. And we are pumped up for this session. So we are in the introduction to working with livestock guardian dogs. So if this isn't the session you want to be in, this is your opportunity to find the session for your 3 o'clock. And just want to give a few reminders before we get going. So we have CEUs available. So if you're an extension agent or a pesticide applicator, you can sign up for your CURS credit and KDA sheets at the Oak registration desk. We have session feedback cards, so I'll be passing those around at the end of the session. Would love your feedback on this session in particular. So before you head out of the room, I'll distribute those, and then you can leave those wherever you are, and I'll collect them at the end. And we just hope you enjoy the session. So I'm going to hand it over to Bree. She's going to introduce herself and help us get started.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in this workshop. My name is Bree Pearsall, and I farm at Rootbound Farm here in Crestwood, Kentucky. We are right outside of Louisville. And this workshop is, first and foremost, a bit of a passion project of mine, but I also just want to start in a really humble place and let you know that first and foremost, I'm a farmer. And this workshop is inspired by my experience working with livestock guardian dogs on my farm. I'm not a dog trainer, and I'm not even a livestock guardian dog expert. What I am is a farmer that has worked with these dogs for 10 years as a part of my livestock management journey. So a lot of
transitioning into the 3 p.m. session.
I like the idea of God as Jenny. You know, Jenny is a good God. So we are, like I said, right outside of Louisville, Kentucky. Rootbound Farm is a certified organic farm. And our bread and butter of what we do is organic vegetables for CSA, farmers market, and wholesale in central Kentucky. But 10 years ago, we moved on to the farm we're on now. And that began also our journey with livestock. So we've been farming vegetables for about 20 years, and we've been working with livestock for about 10. We added livestock to our farm because, well, the reason was really twofold. First and foremost, when we moved to our farm in Crestwood, immediately what we noticed is that, like most Kentucky farms, there was some land that was suitable for growing vegetables, some flat land. And there was a whole lot of rolling hills, pastures, woods, and other things that wanted to be grazed. So at that time, we brought 18 Katahdin ewes, sheep, onto our farm and started our foray with livestock. 10 years later, we have about 200 ewes, sheep on our farm, and we manage about 400 lambs in addition to 200 ewes annually. We use rotational grazing, and we graze that flock of sheep over about 400 acres, which includes our farm and some neighboring farms as well. We also raise pastured poultry. We currently have a laying hen flock of about 1,000 hens that we raise on pastured poultry as well. So we have had 5 livestock guardian dogs on our farm in the past 10 years. We started with a sibling pair of Great Pyrenees, Ghost and Gaia, and this is Ghost. And then we added 3 additional dogs over the last 10 years, Rosie, Juno, and Kiara, that are all 3 Turkish Kangles. So that is a little bit about the types of dogs we have. Ghost and Gaia have now both passed on. We currently have 3 livestock guardian dogs, all Turkish Kangles. And primarily our livestock working dogs are working with our sheep. We have had dogs integrate in and out of poultry over the years as well, which we can talk about. All right, so I might have some kindred spirits in the room on this, but every Thanksgiving I wait very impatiently through the Macy's Day Parade, ready for it to end, so that I can watch the National Dog Show. So that's actually where we're going to start, is on the types of dogs of what you might see in the National Dog Show. If you're not sure how dog shows work, there are 7 recognized categories in the National Dog Show. These are not scientific categories. Why a dog lands in one or the other this is just a human categorization of how we group animals together. There can't be too many in one group, so they create another group. They compete with all the breeds in their group, and then 1 dog from each group goes on. Those 7 dogs compete against each other, 1 from each group, and that dog that wins at the very end is the best in show. So to start just in talking about types of dogs, at the top right, you'll see a very important category, the herding dog. This dog that is the sample herding dog in this pie chart. I'm not sure what it is. It looks a bit like a corgi, but there are many herding dogs that many of us will recognize in this category: border collies, Australian shepherds, corgis, and they do this amazing work of being responsive in relationship with a shepherd, learning commands, using instincts, but also using communication with a human shepherd for moving livestock from one place to another, also separating livestock, picking one animal out of a herd. It's amazing what these animals in the herding category can do. Then there's sporting category and hound category. These dogs, on a broad level, often work to aid in aiding humans in hunting. So whether they're in the sporting category and the hound category has a little bit to do with how they aid humans. So the sporting, that looks like some type of pointer, maybe German pointer or something in this picture, might help to retrieve a downed animal, like your golden retrievers that go into the water and bring out a duck that's been shot by a hunter. They also do things like seek out live animals and hold them, waiting for the hunter to come. So you might see like one of these elk hounds, very large hound dogs, that actually go into the woods. They find an elk, they corner an elk, and they wait for the hunter to come. And then in the bottom, this is the category where we're going to eventually find our livestock guardian dogs in, the working dog category. And this is a fascinating category because these are dogs that have been bred specifically by humans for thousands of years to do very specific, oftentimes, tasks to aid in our work. So you'll see dogs like the Alaskan Malamute and the Siberian Husky that are pretty instantly, we know what those dogs do, right? They pull sleds, they pull things, but there's even nuance between breeds like the Malamute and the Husky of how they do that job. So the Malamute is more for pulling very heavy loads over short distances. The Husky is long distances of very small loads, working with a team. There's other dogs that you may recognize on this list. The Bull Mastiff, I think, is a very fascinating working dog that was bred to assist game wardens, essentially, to protect a game reserve from poachers being people. So this is a dog that was bred to protect a game reserve from people coming onto the reserve to hunt. So that is a very specific set of instincts that have been bred into that dog. The St. Bernard is a fascinating dog that was bred to aid with rescues in the Alps for travelers that may have gotten stuck in a snowdrift or heavy emergency situations in alpine conditions. The St. Bernard, a rescue animal. And then, of course, there are a few animals that appear on this list that are our livestock guardian dog breeds. The Great Pyrenees on the top right, and the Couvache, and the Commandor, the very incredible looking dog with the long tendrils, actually is a livestock guardian dog, the Commandor. All right. So this is just a painting that I found on the internet that I thought was fascinating. It is from the early 1800s showing St. Bernards assisting a distressed traveler in the Alps. Okay, so we started very big picture, dogs, working dogs, livestock dog, guardian dogs. This is just a sample of some of the breeds of livestock guardian dogs. Many of these are what I would call in Kentucky very rare breeds that you may never encounter, but there are a few on here that are very common in Kentucky. The Anatolian Shepherd at the top, the Great Pyrenees, of course, the middle dog, Maremma, and the Kangal in the bottom right are all dogs that you'll see pretty commonly working on farms in Kentucky. There is, so I have had 2 Great Pyrenees, and now I have 3 Kangals. Yeah. There is some nuance among these breeds of how they work with livestock, guarding livestock specifically. I think these dogs are more similar than they are different to each other, but they come from different regions of the world. They come from different shepherding conditions, livestock conditions, and they have different instincts. So a very broad sweep would be like a Great Pyrenees, for example, are often known, and the Maremmas are certainly known to be very close guarding animals. So these are dogs that do their guardian work in very close proximity to the stock. Whereas some breeds, like the Kangal, is more of a patrolling, farther roaming dog. So they are protecting their livestock, but they're often not to be found in a cuddle puddle with the livestock, which is where you will more often find a Great Pyrenees, in my experience. But there are some dogs that are definitely not on this list of livestock guardian dogs. And the reason, as much as I love talking about the National Dog Show, the reason I started there is because I think there is a lot of misinformation about how dogs that were specifically bred to work with livestock differ from each other, particularly within the herding breeds and the guardian breeds. It's very typical to hear of mixes of herding dogs and livestock guardian dogs, or even other breeds of dogs mixed with livestock guardian dogs. And what we're asking these dogs to do is really an incredible task. And so it's important that we understand the context in which their genetics set them up for the type of behavior that we're asking them to do. So if we're looking for our ideal livestock dog, I thought we would head over to Puppy Tender and talk about what we are looking for in a livestock guardian dog. So I have, of the 5 dogs that I have had, 3 of them I found on Craigslist locally in Kentucky. And 2 of them, both of my Pyrenees sibling pair were from a Craigslist ad. My first Kangal was from a Craigslist ad. And my most recent 2 Kangals came from the National Kangal Dog Rescue. So These are some ads that I found in the last couple weeks locally for livestock guardian dogs in Kentucky. So Zoe is an incredible little dog that deserves a loving home and parents that will guide her and care about her safety first and foremost. But Zoe is a Karakachan, which is a livestock guardian dog breed, and Australian Shepherd cross, okay? And you can read more about the reasons that Zoe is looking for a new home, but unfortunately this is something that is all over Craigslist and livestock guardian dog ads, are crosses with dogs that are guardian breeds and non-guardian breeds. This is another ad, a cross between an English Shepherd and a Great Pyrenees cross. An English Shepherd, I believe, is very similar to a Border Collie. So it's a herding dog, highly perceptive to humans, commands, but absolutely not a livestock guardian dog. So I'm going to pause there and see, before we go on to the next section, if there's any questions so far about anything that we've touched on. No? Okay. Sure. Mm-hmm. That's correct. I think, so the question was, when we're looking at crosses between shepherding dogs and livestock guardian dogs, do I think that those dogs often don't work out? I think the answer to the question partly has to do with what is it that you want the dog to do. So in this, in Zoe's ad, very interestingly, it sounds like Zoe is essentially doing everything that her farm needs for her to do. She's good around the sheep and goats and cows, and she lets people know when someone pulls into the driveway. So those are very good and fine goals to have for a farm dog, and it sounds like Zoe is knocking it out of the park. But if we're asking the dog to be a livestock guardian dog, where they're given a lot of independence with stock, then that's something else. So I think sometimes there can be great farm dogs that are crosses of all kinds of livestock guardian dogs and other breeds, but I think for a very specific role of guarding livestock unsupervised from a shepherd, then we need to really set that dog up for success by choosing a breed that was bred to do that. Because herding dogs are often, I mean, their instincts, they're very in tune with where the livestock are. If you've ever had like a border collie in your home, they're the same way. They're following the cat. What's the cat doing? Where's the cat going? They're following the people like that. They're waiting for commands from the humans. They're often stalking, small animals. These are the types of traits that make a wonderful herding dog, but they are the opposite types of traits you want to see in a livestock guardian dog. Okay, so working with livestock guardian dogs is a pretty recent venture in the United States. These dogs have not been on working farms for really all that long. In the 1970s was when the first research projects really happened out of Hampshire College of bringing breeds of dogs from Eastern Europe to the United States to aid ranchers in losing animals to mostly wolves and coyotes and things like that. This is Ray Coppinger, who was one of the first university researchers to work with livestock guardian dogs, and I think that there's a lot more that we know now through practice of integrating these dogs onto farms in the U.S. that kind of dispel some of the very early methods of working with these dogs. Specifically, I think there was a promotion of the idea early on that the best way to raise a livestock guardian dog is to essentially be completely hands-off, toss a young dog in with livestock, and walk away. And that wasn't from a place of cruelty or a place of dismissiveness. I mean, these are people whose life's work was committed to seeing the success of these dogs. I think what that was rooted in was thinking that human interaction would divert the natural instincts of the dog, and that what was inside of them might just naturally come out of them more easily if the human just kind of stayed out of the way. So when we got our first 2 livestock guardian dogs 10 years ago, Ghost and Gaia, that's what I thought we were supposed to do. Like, we're getting these dogs, we can't pet them too much, we can't be too nice to them. We told our employees, pet them a little bit, but don't pet them too much. But ultimately that didn't really work out all that well for us. So. And that's okay, as I came to find out. This is Ghost and Gaia. This is Ghost and Gaia grown up. And this is Rosie. Okay, so most of the livestock guardian dog breeds that we're working with today are dogs that came out of Central Europe, Eastern Europe, Turkey, Armenia. And so to backtrack, what are the conditions, what is the type of animal husbandry that was happening in these places that led humans over thousands of years to breed these instincts into these dogs to work with them? So this is a concept of transhumance. It's a way of moving and grazing livestock according to the seasons and availability of grazing. And farmers rely on their livestock guardian dogs to protect their livestock from attacks by wolves, bears, and other predators. So the idea of transhumance really is, it's pastoralism. There's a lot of words to describe this, but this is shepherds living with their flocks, traveling over fairly large distances often, sometimes very large flocks, sometimes smallish flocks, but moving. What's constant is they're moving, and what's also constant is the shepherd remains an active participant in the daily management of the flock and with the dogs. This little pop out, this is from a blog that's really beautiful and fascinating called Wild Transylvania, which has a lot of pictures of transhumans and livestock guardian dogs. This is a little description here of a little wooden box that has some blankets and stuff in it, and it says the shepherds will sleep in small wooden huts that surround the sheepfold. So at night they'll bring their sheep into a smaller little fenced-in area, and the shepherds will sleep in these small huts. So all this to say, tossing a dog into the livestock and walking away is really never how these dogs were raised. It's not how their instincts were cultivated over hundreds of years. And so it helps just to know that, okay? Very few of us will have a farming operation that looks much like this. In many ways, our farms look more different than this than they are similar, and that's okay. These dogs can be incredibly successful in all types of farms. Very small farms, medium-sized farms, farms with livestock, farms with no livestock. But this is when things seem like, what is this behavior? Where is this coming from? One strategy is to remember, how am I asking my dog to perform in an environment that looks different from what their genetics have evolved to do? So our farms may not look like this. Oftentimes, our farms look more like this, what we're asking our livestock guardian dogs to do. So we may be asking them to be in a very small space. We may be asking them to be behind a barrier, like a fence. We may be asking them to guard a very small amount of animals. or to guard a type of animal that is not historically the type of animal that they have herded. Again, okay, no blame, right? We just need to start with a place of humility of what we're asking our dogs to do. Okay. All right, so probably the most common question we get on farm tours, people that are interested in livestock guardian dogs, is how do you train a livestock guardian dog? So I'm going to attempt to walk us through some of the pieces of that question. So first and foremost, I don't believe that you train a livestock guardian dog to protect livestock. That is a part of their instinct, of their breed, of how they live a life alongside of livestock. But, which is very different than a herding dog, for example. You do train a herding dog to herd livestock. A really good herding dog is going to have a ton of instinct, but they still have to learn commands, move this way, move that way, go forward, come back, get this animal when I point to it. There's no training behavior with a livestock guardian dog that mimics that type of training with a herding dog, okay? We do teach our livestock guardian dogs a whole lot of other things. The other things we do teach them are how to live in a man's world or a human's world, okay? We need them to be a part of our farms, part of our families, part of our communities, and so there's a lot that we work with our dogs around the edges of how to live in a man's world. We also teach these dogs appropriate behavior around livestock. So going back to that picture of transhumance, of the beautiful pastoral landscape, did a dog in that situation in Transylvania ever chase a sheep and bite it on the back legs? I'm sure that happened. And they were redirected by a shepherd who was more often than not there, okay? So we teach our dogs how to behave around livestock. And then lastly, we set them up for success by helping them have as much positive access to livestock so that when their instincts kick in, they're ready. All right, so dogs living in a man's world. These are some of the puppy essentials, in my opinion, of working with livestock guardian dogs. Back up 10 years ago, I worked on very few of these things with my first 2 livestock guardian dogs because I thought I was supposed to try to be hands-off, okay? Over time, I've added things to this list, and I now realize how many things over the course of that dog's life you need them to be reliably able to do. Number 1 is being contained, whether that's being kenneled or being on a lead. When I say a lead, I mean like a stake in the ground that has like a 20-foot cable where the dog can be still and be calm. I think this is a critical skill for a livestock guardian dog because there's many instances, especially in a young dog's life, in which you need the dog to be calm and you need them to be contained. So one example is your moving sheep. On our farm, moving sheep looks like 400 sheep rushing a corner of the paddock and running into a fresh paddock of 3 acres of fresh grass on a spring day. These sheep are excited, they're hungry, they're jumping, they are running, and that's a very high stimulus activity for a young livestock working dog, okay? So it's great to have your dog that can be a part of that, can be there when you're moving sheep. Maybe you keep them on a leash with you while you open the fence and let the livestock through, or maybe you have them on a lead. But being comfortable on a lead is something the dog has to learn, okay? I have a dog now that I never practiced this with as a young dog, And if I try to tie him onto a cable, onto a lead, just sit there, be calm, he's freaking out. He's like like trying to tether a raccoon, okay? But then I have another dog, Kiara, my youngest dog, who came to me from a rescue situation where the foster parent had been kenneling her at night. Kiara is very comfortable with the kennel. And for the first 3 months we had her, every night, kennel up, go to your place. She goes in. If you've ever had a dog that's crate trained, I think it's a wonderful way to raise a dog that is comfortable being still, being contained. And I think being kenneled translates very easily to being able to be on a lead. Other things that have become critical throughout the dog's life are walking on a leash and being led by the collar. So what I mean by being led by the collar is being able to take a dog and say, okay, we're going over here, whether we're getting in an RTV, I need you to go under the fence and go in with the livestock. I need you to come out of the fence, out of the livestock. Being able to move your dog by leading them by the collar is a skill. This is Gaia in the top left, riding with Ben in the RTV. Sometimes we're moving our animals over really large distances, maybe 100 acres. I'm moving you to a different group of animals. I need you to get there quickly. The last few years of Gaia's life, she didn't go anywhere quickly, so she got a lot of rides in the RTV. This is, okay, so yeah, we talked about Kiara and her kennel, translating onto leash. Kiara is also my most challenging dog as far as being able to be alone, unsupervised with livestock. Kiara is now a year old, and she's still not able to be unsupervised in a sheep paddock. So what I am able to do with Kiara some is give her periods of time where she's in the paddock with the livestock on a lead. If she also has a cozy bale of hay to lay on and a bone to chew on, she's very happy. She's not stressed out. She's not pulling on the lead, but she's able to spend time with the stock, with the other livestock dogs, because she's comfortable being on a 20-foot lead. Getting into and riding in an RTV or a car, we talked a little bit about that, but also sit, come, lay down, don't jump. This is me in the bottom left-hand corner after receiving a phone call from in McMansion neighborhood 5 miles away from my farm, where my two dogs, Rosie and Kiara, had left the farm, are hanging out, swimming in people's pools, and peering in their windows. So I have to go pick up the dogs. I need them to come to me. I need to be able to contain them, hold them by the collar, and I need them to get into my station wagon. I've been in the same situation with my dog Juno, where I've been called by a neighbor, your dog's here, okay, I'll come get him. And then I get there, come here, Juno. He runs away. He won't come, okay? Come here, Juno. I'm chasing him all over the neighborhood. I finally lay down and start rolling around. He thinks I'm injured. He comes to me. I finally have the dog, thank God, but now I'm 50 yards away from my car, and he won't go anywhere with me. He won't let me lead him by the collar. So then I'm picking up a dog that's 110 pounds and trying to haul it into my car. So this can become a real issue. So, not to skip over the things like walking on a leash, being led by the collar, that become incredibly important with livestock guardian dogs. And then just quickly, comfort being groomed. I think this is very important. When your dog is a puppy, to have them comfortable with you examining every part of their body. And to do that in a setting where the dog is relaxed and is rewarded, and it can be fun. You're petting the dog, you're rubbing their belly, but you're also doing things like rubbing their feet. Dogs can be weird about their feet, and so they need to be used to you rubbing in between their toes. You might need to trim that dog's nails. I hope you'll be able to trim your dog's nails. They need to be comfortable with you touching their genitals. You need to be able to examine that dog if something comes up, putting your hands on the inside of their ear gently. So it's just your dog being familiar in a comfortable, relaxed way when they're young, being examined. Yeah. 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 She is chasing livestock, eventually biting their legs and holding them down and biting their necks. So she's doing the same thing with the livestock that she does when she's playing with other dogs. So if you ever watch the things that dogs do, they start out, they bite each other's back legs, then they switch to biting their legs, and then they flip around and they go for the leg, then they go for the neck. Well, that just escalates really quickly with sheep. So Kiara is a year old, still doing that. My other dogs have all, Ghost and Gaia were unsupervised with livestock at like 4 to 5 months of age. And then I think Kiara is the other extreme. I've not given up on her that she'll be a livestock guardian dog, but I think it's pretty different just for each animal. Yep. No, the only blood-related dogs I've had were my first 2 Pyrenees that were siblings. Yeah, and the others are all different, slightly different ages too. Yep. I think it depends on, okay, the question was, do I think they work better in pairs? I think that it depends on what your need for them to do. So when we decided to get our third livestock guardian dog, it was because we were losing livestock to coyotes having 2 Great Pyrenees. And I think what we realized is that we had a higher predator load than the 2 dogs would handle. So these dogs are smart enough that if they're outnumbered, they're not going to, charge into a pack of coyotes if they feel outnumbered. And so what they were doing is they were holding back, they were hanging out with the stock, and we were losing 2 to 3 full-grown sheep in a night to packs of coyotes. So I think there are instances in which your predator load will determine really how many dogs you need. I think you should be conservative on adding more dogs, because adding dogs adds drama to your life. So it's not something to be done willy-nilly, but there are times when your predator load will tell you whether or not you need more dogs. I do think that it can be easier to raise 2 dogs together if you ultimately have enough work and enough land and enough fencing and enough skill to have 2 livestock dogs at the same time. But the thing that's easier about having 2 dogs is they have each other to divert that puppy energy to. So part of the issue I think Kiara is having is when she tries to play like that with the older, more mature dogs, they put her in her place. Like, I don't want to do that. So she's seeking out that interaction somewhere else. So Gaia and Ghost had each other all along the way. 20 weeks. Yeah. So not a tiny puppy. Yeah. All right. So this is one of my dog training gurus, and so I encourage you, if you are considering or you have livestock guardian dogs and you don't have a philosophy or a mentor for training, working with dogs, then just start there, okay? And I think that the Dog Whisperer is an amazing, accessible leader to teach us about communicating with our dogs. Things that I learned from Caesar, the Dog Whisperer, are that every interaction is a teaching moment. So for example, how we walk with our dogs, especially with a young dog who's learning. We're walking in a way, when I mean walking, I mean like on a walk with a leash. We're walking in a way that mirrors how a pack moves through space. So we're not, oh, do you want to sniff that poop? Okay, I'll wait. Okay, then let's sniff this poop. Okay, I'll wait. And then you want to run in a circle? Okay, that's so cute. No, we're moving, and we're not stopping. We're not stopping until we get to a destination or a halfway point, and then we'll stop, and we will sniff, and we will do those things. But we're not doing that when we're in pack moving mode. And so that is how I walk my dogs. We move, and then we rest, and we play. Another thing I learned from Caesar is how you greet your dog, whether that is how you're coming in your front door, to your home dog after a long day of work, what energy are you communicating to the dog? So if you're walking in the door from work, oh my God, I'm home. I'm so happy to see you. Rosie, come here, come here, come here. Yay, 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 yay. You're creating chaos in that dog's mind, and you're creating a very heightened sense of arousal for that dog that is based on you walking in the door. And I think a lot of dogs that have separation issues, it's that dopamine, that rush that they're waiting for from you. I'm here, it's about me, attention on me, and that is not a energy that is calm and that is assertive. And so that is something I learned from Caesar. Walking in your door, I'm not, hey there, I'm doing some other things, I'm unpacking my bag, I'm gonna get a snack, 5 minutes in, good dog, it's good to see you, okay, let's go play. Caesar will explain this to you much better than I have, but this is a skill that I have translated into my livestock dogs when I go into a sheep paddock. So I don't need a dog that stands at the fence waiting for me to come into the sheep paddock, because when I get there, I'm gonna be, I'm so glad to see you, Ghosty big boy, come here, let's play, I'm here, I'm finally here, and you don't have to be with these boring sheep anymore, and it's all about me. It's the same energy when you go into your home with your home dog as when you go into the livestock pen. All right. How am I doing on time? Okay. So we talked about, we don't train a livestock guardian dog how to guard livestock. We definitely teach them how to live in our world. And we teach them how to behave around livestock, okay? So the two resources that I will share with you today, well, 3, but 2 of them are this book, The Way of the Pack by Brenda Negree, and the other one is, any book by Caesar. Both of them suggest using like a guttural noise as a redirection with your dog. You may have heard that if you've ever seen the dog whisperer, but like whether it's a grrr or a something like that, but you're communicating a consistent signal to your dog, that behavior is not okay. And that's what you're also doing with a young livestock guardian dog. Some of them make it really easy. They just kind of seem to get it from day one. Others of them need constant redirection. You don't really know in the very beginning where in that spectrum your dog is going to lie. So that's why it's very important, I think, to go really hard with a training regimen from day one, so that when you realize, hey, my dog's a perfect angel and I don't even need to be doing this, then you can just stop doing it. But when you realize my dog is really struggling to behave around livestock, then you already have some things in place of how you can direct your dog, how they respond to you, etc. This is Ghost and Gaia playing. You were asking, what are they doing with the livestock when they're misbehaving? It's often just play behavior. This is them playing, going really hard at playing in a sheep paddock. This is absolutely fine behavior. And we encourage it. It's a way to wear the dog out, to get that energy out. They can do it in the paddock with the livestock, with the sheep, with the chickens, as long as they're not injuring any livestock. If they're a little too rambunctious when they're having, vigorous playtime, which is usually in the morning and in the evening, dawn and dusk, that's when the frisky zooms usually happen. Yep. Yeah. I think that depends on the dog. So for a very young dog, that dog is wherever the safe place, contained place that you've defined for your dog during that very young puppy time. So it might be in your house. It might be in a shed. It might be loose in your backyard, fenced away from the livestock. I think it depends on your unique situation, but they're not with the livestock if they're not deemed by you to be trustworthy to do that. Okay, this is from the book, The Way of the Pack, and it's a training regimen for integrating livestock guardian dogs into a poultry paddock. I have more experience with sheep. We do have dogs integrated into our poultry livestock as well. But in my experience, it's easier to take an older, experienced livestock guardian dog and make them a chicken dog later in life than it is to start a young dog with poultry. So there's 15 steps in this training plan. We're not going to read each of them, but I do want to highlight a few of them. The ones in purple are the ones that we'll talk about. Plan on a daily training for your pups. So these early days, you're making it a reward time with positive reinforcement, giving them treats before every class, and soon they're reminding her it was time for school. Get the pups tired out with activities such as a perimeter walk, that we're moving walk, that Caesar walk of your barnyard or active play before you engage them in training. This, I think, is critical, that you create time for exercise, for play, for zooms outside of the time that you're asking the dog to be working with you with livestock. Begin training with a harness and a leash to keep them in line and for correction. I think with that first video, that video of Juno meeting the livestock, I think he was on a long leash with me. You know, he was doing good, so he didn't need a whole lot, but I had a leash on him in case, you know, he needed to be redirected. Yeah. Yeah, I think the sheep will usually only do that really intensely like a couple times. And I think it's also can be a cyclical, it can be a kind of a cyclical issue of misbehavior, of chasing. If the livestock are really excited about the dog and they're running around, then the dog's like, well, everybody's running around. I mean, clearly this is a game of chase. And so I think another benefit of having Kiara in the paddock, even though she's on a lead, is that the livestock are getting used to her. They don't know she's on a lead. They just know that when Kiara's here, I don't need to start running around, which makes it worse. Positively reinforce good behavior by giving them big soup bones to chew on. I buy beef femur bones, buy the 50-pound box from my neighbor farm, Fox Hollow, on deep discount, because I go through so many of those bones at the early puppy phase. These dogs want to chew, and the more you can give them something to chew on, the less likely they're to choose a lamb tail to chew on. Okay, I think that's all right. We can come back to that, but it's also time to ask for some questions. So I want to just talk about resources real quick. These are my top resources for working with livestock guardian dogs. Texas A&M is the only ag university extension program that I know of dedicated to livestock guardian dogs. You can trust they're doing their due diligence on the types of research they're putting out there, extensive YouTube videos and beyond coming out of Texas A&M. We've talked about the other two, but I do want to say, if you are currently using Facebook groups as your primary source of information for livestock guardian dogs, I strongly encourage you to get out of those groups and seek out some of these other resources. I find livestock guardian, I'm in a few, like two, and even ones that I thought were going to be good end up being reinforcing really bad tropes of livestock guardian dogs, blaming people, not providing very much useful or universal information at all. And so, as Ryan Gosling reminds us, get off of the Facebook group and read some of these resources that are more vetted for working with livestock guardian dogs. So I'm going to pause there because we only have about 5 minutes left for questions. 10? Okay. So we can talk about these things or we can talk about other things. So I'd like to hear any questions or feedback that you have. Yeah. Thank you, Ryan.
I don't know what the end of your first pair of dogs life looked like, but do you have any recommendations or heard anything about form of retirement once they get to a certain age or a certain condition?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. So both of my Great Pyrenees died when they were about 8 years old, which isn't super old for a livestock. For working dog, these larger breeds of dogs don't live to be 14, 15. I think the average age for a Pyrenees is more like 10. So I felt like we lost our dogs a little early. But to your question, both of them died in the paddock working, Ghost with the chickens, Gaia with the sheep. But retirement for them, for me, looked like two things. For Ghost, it was moving to chickens. We moved him into chickens the last 2 years of his life. He was it was a smaller space for him. He really enjoyed working with the chickens. He was a lazy dog at that point, and he didn't have to travel as far for his water, et cetera, et cetera. So that is, I think chickens is a wonderful place for a retirement dog, because I think chickens are very challenging for livestock guardian dogs. Why would you not want to play or kill this little floppy bird thing? So that was his retirement plan. For Gaia, it looked like making sure she had enough other dog backup. So I wasn't going to put her in a paddock by herself in a large. I have certain places on my farm that have higher coyote pressure than others. Wasn't going to put her in a paddock with high coyote pressure by herself. I wanted to make sure I always had a stronger, more capable dog or two with her. So that's how we aged into retirement for those two. Yeah.
So how did you transition your older dog to start not wanting to kill those chickens after leaving sheep and then going into chickens when he already thinks the sheep versus the chickens?
It really wasn't hard, honestly. I don't know. I think he didn't have an interest to kill the chickens because he was just kind of over it. And I have a dog now, Rosie, who when she was younger I tried her with the chickens and didn't work out. 2 years later, I've now put her back in with chickens, and she's fine. I think she just needed to mature into that role. So for Ghost, he didn't seem to miss being with the sheep, I would say. He was still on the farm. The chickens are much closer to our house, which honestly, all the livestock guardian dogs like us. They want to be around the people, and we have a lot more interaction with the chickens much closer to the house than we do with the sheep. So, yeah.
Did you have a question?
I think she had a question first, and then we'll come back here.
I was just wondering if you had, so we got our border collie as a puppy, and he's 1, and we're now getting goats, and I'm trying to transition. So he's an indoor dog. Do you have any experience of dogs being inside at night and also being a guardian dog? Is that possible or not?
Are you wanting your border collie to be a guardian dog?
Yes, they would probably be locked up at night.
Okay.
But he would be out there during the day.
Okay.
Because we do have coyotes.
Yeah. I guess I would start by saying a border collie is not a livestock guardian dog. So a border collie is a herding dog. A border collie is smaller than most coyotes. So I would not expect success having a border collie protect livestock from coyotes. I think the presence of any dog can help with predators like raccoons, possums, but you said goats, so those are predators for chickens. So really your predators are stray dogs, neighbors' dogs, and coyotes. And I don't think a border collie is going to help in any of those situations. I think that they may get along well with the goats. I don't know if that answers your question. You're wanting to integrate them peacefully into the new goat herd. I think using training behavior of what you expect as far as redirection when they're around the goats, if they're trying to do things like chase, I mean, that's not acceptable. Whether you're a livestock guardian dog or a house dog, you have to redirect that type of behavior. So I think there's definitely a way to work with the dog when they're with you doing chores, where you're communicating with them what's expected as far as behavior, but I would not have high expectations for them as a predator control issue. I think we had a question over here next.
Yeah, we have 2 Great Pyrenees, male, female, and 1 Great Pyrenees with Anatolian Shepherd.
Yeah.
And they are guardian dogs.
Yep.
Right now we have sheep, but not so many.
Yeah.
And they have puppies, if somebody wants puppies. They are 8 weeks old, Great Pyrenees, 100%.
Yeah.
And my question is, the Great Pyrenees, we have coyotes,
Yeah.
we have raccoons, and
Yeah.
they keep everything clean.
Yeah.
All the area, not only ours, but the neighbors.
Yeah.
You know, they are so good. The hogs, you
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
they are really amazing. But my question is, when I can put the puppies with the chip, really to let them inside with the chip.
Yeah. I think it depends a little bit on the nature of your sheep. If you have sheep sheep are very gentle animals. So it's not like putting a small puppy in with a bunch of donkeys that are, maybe going to kick it. Sheep are incredibly gentle. And so in my experience, you can pretty much put those dogs in and get them exposed to the sheep very early, 10 weeks, But what you want to look out for is that you're able to protect the dog from any kind of, the sheep get spooked and then 20 of them decide to run, they step on those dogs, okay? So you just have to make sure that everybody's set up for the dog's safety of accidents. Sheep are not going to attack a puppy. I mean, maybe a ram, but outside of a ram, they're not going to attack a puppy. But when they're unsupervised with the sheep, I think that's the much longer discussion of when they're ready for that. But I think it's good for them to go ahead and be exposed. If you have them in a barn, do you have a barn? Yeah. I think raising puppies in a barn with sheep is a great idea. And just make sure the puppies have like a little safe zone where they can get away into their corner. Gaia and Ghost spent a lot of their first winter. We still brought all our sheep into a livestock barn at that time. So every night, all the sheep, which at that point was like 20 sheep, and the 2 dogs would go into a barn. And we had like a little corner, this big, that only the dogs could get through. And they would go there regularly, they'd go out and they'd mingle, but they always had their escape and their space. And I think that's very important with puppies, that they have a space that they know they can escape to get away from the livestock, so they feel like they have a safe corner. Yeah. Yes, in the back corner. And then
just for dogs who have issues with talking about babies or whatever, we have goats, and the dogs want to try to immediately take the babies from the goats as soon as they're born.
Yeah.
Integrate that in a safe space so the mother, the goat is not getting hurt, and the dog knows its place. It's obviously
Yeah.
going to be the mother, not the kid.
Is it a young dog?
No, we've had her for 2 years.
2 years? Okay. I think the best advice I ever got from dealing with very specific behavior issues like that is just like remove the trigger. So whatever's happening, instead of be there to recorrect it when you can, but when you can't be there, just remove the trigger. Whether if it's a small amount of animals that are lambing or kidding at the time, separate them from the rest of the flock and the dog, or separate the dog. That behavior is not okay, and I have seen it with very young dogs. Usually I think they grow out of it, but potentially not if they're allowed to just keep doing it. So I would remove the trigger while it's happening and then try it again. In 5 months from now, the dog may not do that at all. It doesn't mean the dog's always going to do that just because they're doing it now. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I think this will be our last question.
I do rotational grazing for my sheep, and I'm adding a duck tractor behind the paddock that the sheep have just been in. And I have 2 guardian dogs, 2 Great Pyrenees. They're like a mating pair.
Yeah.
How successful will I be to separate them? Put one with the ducks and one leave with the sheep, but the paddocks would be adjacent to one another.
Yeah.
Will they stay separate, or will they just hate that?
I think, so my first question back to you is, do you need them to be separate to be successful? If they're guarding the sheep that are right next to the goats, you know, do they need to be right there, next to the ducks? Do they need to be right there with the ducks in order to be successful guarding them?
I have them adjacent to each other because that helps with parasite control. So that's the reason why they're adjacent.
Yeah. But I think that's good because the dogs are patrolling, they're barking, and everything they're doing in the paddock right next to the ducks is benefiting the ducks. So I do think the dog you put with the ducks that's a much harder and a much more boring job, and it's probably a smaller space.
It's going to be the same size space.
Same.
But I'm just wondering if they're still going to be content and happy, or are they going to, you know, they're going to want to, because they still play a lot,
Right.
they want to be together.
I do have dogs that will work independently, and they're fine with that. I mean, actually completely happy working independently. So I don't think it's a black and white, absolutely don't separate them. But I think if you try it and it's not working, the benefit of you doing that so close to the sheep is like you might not have a lot of predator pressure on your ducks, which are very vulnerable. You might not have as much pressure because any animal that wants to eat the ducks also is seeing the Pyrenees that are right next to them. So
Yeah, I was more thinking about just the aerial predator pressure that I might have with the ducks.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's true. That's a different, yeah. All right, I think we're out of time, right, Katie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if we can just give a round of applause
Thank
for Bree.
you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So if everyone has that yellow survey, if you could leave it at your table, or you can bring it and put it in a stack and give it to Nathan in the back. He's kind of waving his hand. So leave it, collect it, bring it to me. Oh, no, it's okay. And we appreciate all that feedback. So thank you so much. We appreciate it. Yay. Thank you. Thank you.
Is there another presentation after this?
Yes. We have one more. So
Hey, what's up? Presentation.
So he's the next one, and I'll look at the schedule.
Thank you. Let me turn